You've heard me argue that divisions should be done away with. And I still feel that way. Let's just put it to you this way. Divisions are bad for college football. None of these conferences should still be playing a division format, period. It's bad for college football. I think that I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson in why do we have them in the first place. If you don't know, this is why. Back in the early 90s, when the SEC kind of became the SEC, and the Big 12 was kind of becoming the Big 12, and the Southwest Conference was splitting up, there were bylaws that were created in order for the SEC to create a first-of-its-kind conference championship game. Part of those bylaws were that you had to have a minimum of 12 teams in your conference and a minimum of 2 divisions of 6. That was written into the bylaws. And so that's what everyone tried to do. That's why the Big 12 went to 12 teams. How did you get a conference championship game? That's how you did it. That's why the Pac-10 went to Pac-12. Same with the Big 10. Big 10 needed more teams. Well, okay, how do we get a 12th team? How do we get 2 divisions so that we can have a conference championship game? Because that was a revenue generator for these conferences. So why did every conference strive to get to 12? It was in the bylaws. Had to get to 12, had to have 2 divisions in order to have a conference championship game. So then the last round of conference realignment happens, and there's the Big 12, has a conference championship game, now is under the threshold of the 12 teams and the 2 divisions, and so they went and appealed the bylaw. And they said, we want to throw this out. And it was part of the Power 5 gaining autonomy, and part of that autonomy was they did away with this minimum level, the criteria for every conference. So then, in order for the Big 12 to have their conference championship game with 10 teams and no divisions, that bylaw was then thrown out. Okay, so it went away. Now, there's no criteria. So you don't have to have divisions in order to have your conference championship game. So there is no reason for divisions. They're hurting college football. I think this year is a case study in how divisions have hurt the sport. Look at this year and how much damage, I know it's tough to use that language, but how much damage divisions are doing in college football. Okay, let's just think of it from this perspective. Every conference with divisions, SEC, Big 10, ACC, all the divisions are doing is hurting the conference. Hurting the teams in the conference, hurting the conference. There's no wins in this for these 3 entities. And let's walk through them all. In the ACC, let's start with the ACC. The top 3 teams ranked for them right now, all in one side of the division in the Atlantic Division. Okay? They're on the top 15. Clemson, Wake, and Cuse. How about the Cuse? I love it. Cuse. Cuse is going to get some more love. Listen, we work in our industry. There's so many Syracuse people around, and they always bother me about like, hey, you need to give Cuse more love. That's coming. Don't worry. More Cuse love coming. But those 3 teams are the best teams in the ACC right now. They're the best teams and top teams as far as the AP poll, and they all rest in one side of the division. Now, Clemson has already beat Wake Forest. You would assume that they would beat Syracuse, but we don't know. Okay, so let's just leave that out there. Next best team is going to be North Carolina. So now you finally get into the next division and you think to yourself, okay, there's North Carolina. Well, do we really think they're that good? They're a 1-loss team, probably going to play for the conference championship. How is that a win for the ACC if one of those teams, let's say it's Clemson, goes to the ACC championship game and all they have to do is win and they're in? But it's a no-win scenario. From the ACC's perspective, if Clemson blows North Carolina out, it's not good for the brand of the game or the value of the game. If Clemson wins in a close game, it calls into question, in a subjective sport, their ability to be included in the playoff. If they lose, then they're out. North Carolina's not going to the playoff. At least we don't anticipate, and I certainly don't anticipate. So it is a no-win proposition for the ACC this year to have divisions. Wouldn't you much rather have just the top two teams face each other in the ACC championship game? Absolutely. Same in the Big Ten, by the way. In the Big Ten, the top three teams, as far as the rankings go, in the conference are all in one side of the division: Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Next team ranked, finally we get to a Western Division team, and it's Illinois. So there's Illinois with one loss. That loss was to Indiana. They still have to play Michigan during the course of this year. Do we really think that Illinois is going to be in a position where they only have one loss playing for the Big Ten championship game? I personally don't, okay? So that leads us to probably the winner of Michigan, Ohio State, playing Illinois in a no-win scenario. Win big, ratings not great, value of your game goes down. Win close, it's subjective, and the committee can call your team into question of whether they're going to put them into the playoff or not. Lose, and you're out. Bad proposition. Now let's look at the SEC. You might be thinking, well, Joel, in the SEC, isn't it working out for them? No, it's not working out for them because their top two teams, now Tennessee and Georgia, are in one side of the division. The reason this is bad is because last week's game, Tennessee's game, is going to be minimized. Their effort is going to be minimized. Walk through this with me for a moment. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, last week, Tennessee lost to Mississippi State. Okay? Non-division game, and they lost it. Would anything be different for Tennessee in terms of their ability to win the SEC? Nope. Not one thing. Not one thing. So what did beating Alabama in epic fashion do for the Vols? Got them a sweet ranking this week. But it doesn't do anything for them because Alabama's still got a cleaner route to the championship game than Tennessee does. The divisions are hurting the SEC as well. So here's Tennessee, and now they're going to be probably in a must-win against Georgia on the road, or else they're going to have to watch a team whom they beat play Georgia in the SEC championship game. How's that good for the conference? It's not. It's not. Then Tennessee is going to be praying that Alabama then beats Georgia, but then Georgia would have the tiebreaker. Like, how does Tennessee get in there? So it does eventually trickle down to the playoff. Whereas if you didn't have divisions and you had the same schedule, even in the SEC right now, you would be trending towards a Tennessee-Georgia rematch in the SEC championship game. So Tennessee would have more control over their own destiny than they do even currently. That's a bad thing. Again, I'm going to go back to this. Tell me what is different for Tennessee if last week they would have lost to Mississippi State. What's different in the SEC race? Not much. Not much. They're in a good position right now. They control their own destiny, and good for them. Good for them. But the barrier to entry is greater for them than it is even for the Tide. And they beat Alabama. Again, divisions are horrible for the sport. All three of those conferences right now are dealing with the same thing. What's Michigan and Ohio State supposed to do, right? What if they face each other undefeated? Somebody loses. Like, oh, great. And then you watch Illinois play for the conference championship? Like, what if Syracuse plays Clemson and that's the only loss Syracuse has? And what? And then you get to see North Carolina play for the conference championship? It's crazy. It's crazy. It's outdated. There's no rule that states that we need to do this, and we can do better. We can do better. There's just way too much arbitrary scheduling, who you're going to play from the opposite side, who you're not going to play from the opposite side. Let's just put it to you this way. You really think that Illinois would be in position to go to the conference championship game if they were just included in the other division, if they had to play Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State this year? Of course not. Of course not. Of course not. So what? We're going to reward them because of geography? Well, that ain't right. That ain't right. And listen, I'm on Tennessee's side right now. You should be rewarded, Vols, for your win a week ago against Alabama. As it stands right now, you're not going to be rewarded. And the burden of proof is still on you. And you're going to have to do it on the road against Georgia, probably in order to go to that conference championship game. The other two conferences, I think that they have it right, and the races right now are primed for an epic finish towards the end. In fact, in both of the other conferences that have done away with divisions, Pac-12 and the Big 12, this week on Saturday, we're going to see the last remaining undefeateds as far as conference play goes face each other. Right? So this is fantastic. We know who are the teams that are still in the race. We know that all you've got to do is continue to win, and you can control your destiny to get to that point. We know that the top two teams will be facing each other in their conference championship game. We know that the winner of that game will be in a better position with the College Football Playoff Committee than if these other conferences, if Ohio State struggles with Illinois for a half, or if Clemson struggles with North Carolina for 3 quarters, or if Tennessee is 11-1 and gets to go out there and watch Georgia handle Alabama, how's that good for anybody? We need to do away with divisions. And by the way, it can happen, and it can happen quickly. I would encourage the Big Ten to do away with divisions as quickly as possible. They've been talking about it for next year, and I think that they should do it. I really do. I think that you can do more creative and cool things with your league schedule. You can retain a rivalry, mix up other games. You can also start to create parity matchups where the last place team from the previous year definitely doesn't have to play maybe a top tier team, but they get an easier schedule within conference. You can do a lot of things to increase the value of your conference schedule. You can do a lot of things to increase the parity within your own conference. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, you can get the best 2 teams in your conference to the conference championship game. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.